Welcome back to Block TV. It's time now for Crypto Globe, where we take a trip around the world to hear the latest developments in the industry. And to guide us on this tour of discovery is, of course, Ethan Pierce, Director of the Paris-based Crypto Assets Institute. Ethan, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, good to see you.
All right, so first, Ethan, I just want to get your hot take on the launch of backed Bitcoin futures trading. Happened just a few hours ago. What do you think?
Well, obviously, this is a great sign for adoption in terms of looking to see crypto become a recognized asset class in some way in each of these different markets. So in the commodity space, this is really interesting. It's brand new, so I mean, there isn't going to be a lot to say yet in terms of how it's going. I don't think we should expect miracles that institutional players are going to just jump into this immediately, but this at least starts the process. I'm not sure that all of them, I mean, just because it's legally an option for a financial institution or others to get involved with anything we're seeing in crypto, whether it's this or we look at tokenized securities and other things, doesn't mean they'll do it immediately, doesn't mean that necessarily their lawyers have cleared that they're allowed to play in this new field or whatever. So I think that they can be a little bit slow maybe for that, but I think the thing that's really interesting, that's exciting is in the commodity space, a lot of commodities aren't delivered for 30 days. And this creates a scenario where it could have a one-day contract. And so I think that could be an interesting thing for trading and how this, where does this go? What does this mean? The minimums I think are not too high. I think it's $3,900 of assets, so what I read or something like that, to be able to purchase a contract. So this is accessible in the smaller scale. So yeah, it's exciting. This is again another sign. One of the things we'll look at a little bit later with Korea is just this idea that as governments start to bring crypto assets and into the regulated financial markets, we're going to see a lot less fear and a lot more adoption and a lot more really cool things happen. So I think this is all good in the sense of a good sign. Now let's see where it goes from here in terms of actual scale.
Yeah, certainly we'll have to play the wait and see game. But as you say, not necessarily miracles happening overnight. And this perhaps segues us neatly into our next topic for today, that of Turkey announcing a national blockchain infrastructure as plans for a potential central bank digital currency. Turkey's been facing some pretty stiff economic times recently, but could digital currencies and their own central bank issued one be the solution to getting them out of the quagmire? What do you think?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So that's the main current piece of news really this week is just this, they've announced that they want to have a national blockchain infrastructure. The plans for they had this Strategy 2023 meeting to discuss economic and industry and technology strategies for where they want Turkey to be going over the next few years. So this was just kind of a new thing to say that this is a priority for them. Nothing really new in the sense of what they're saying around infrastructure. They're talking about the typical things of, land registration, whether academic certificates, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later as well, customs, all kinds of the typical things that we want to see in infrastructure that blockchain can solve well. But it's just a good sign to see this coming from a ministry of another large country. So that's a great sign. But if we tie that into also what else going on, there's just lots of little cool things going on in Turkey all at the same time. One of the main universities, Istanbul the Bahçeşehir University, just launched the Istanbul Blockchain and Innovation Center, which will create a hub of innovation and research and development linked around blockchain at, I guess, what is one of the more important technical universities in Turkey. And then Turkey's clearing and settlement bank, Takis Bank, just launched a blockchain-based platform for trading gold. So that's kind of cool. And they've talked about issuing their own digital currency, central bank digital currency, more in this 2019 to 2023 idea as a part of they're calling it the 11th development plan. and they think that a digital central bank currency should be a part of Turkey's financial future, which I think is a pretty exciting thing to hear. And then the last statistic that I heard that was pretty cool when I was doing some more research on this was there was a statistic that did a global consumer survey in 2019 that suggested that around 20% of Turkey's residents have done some kind of crypto investment. And if that's true, it makes it the highest per capita, at least in Europe, if not in the world, of the countries that they surveyed. So just all kinds of really interesting things going on in Turkey. And we're seeing this across the board, that potentially difficult economies are also encouraging people to look differently at how they can potentially interact with the finance world and deal with all kinds of things through investment and remittance, cross-border payments, all kinds of things. And so obviously blockchain and crypto are a big piece of that, and it's fun to see more and more people aligning.
Yeah, certainly, Turkey shows a potential, very strong use case there for cryptocurrencies with the struggles they've had in their own economy. But turning to another country in, I suppose, the similar region, the UAE, now launching Ministry of Health blockchain system as part of their overarching Emirates blockchain strategy. What can you tell us, Ethan?
So the idea is they want to have a platform that will let them assess basically evaluations of healthcare professionals, both private and public, doctors, pharmacists, nurse, hospitals, all the different things, but allow that information to be have a layer of trust, but also be something that they can potentially interact with in a more automated way. And this interacts with this larger strategy of Emirates, the Emirates blockchain strategy of 2021. Which is pretty aggressive. They want to see 50% of all government transactions somehow processed on the blockchain, linked to the blockchain in some way, which I think is incredibly aggressive and very, very interesting to see. So they're doing that in all kinds of ways. There's we can talk about immigration, we can talk about land title, we can talk about just general things around government and dealing with how governments process information and how they deal with finance. But that's just really kind of another interesting and cool thing to see a government getting this aggressive in a very short amount of time, 2021, to have so much going on and already rolling out. We've seen a couple land title projects going on in Dubai and a few different things around tourism that they've already pushed. And so seeing the health ministry also get involved now and be pushing out their first solution that is blockchain enabled means that they're well on their way to trying to hit their targets for 2021. Yeah, I think that's pretty fun to see this infrastructure play. I think what's interesting, but we'll also see this with the Korean news here in a second, is there are a lot of economies that are crypto doubtful or wary, but they are very interested in what the blockchain can do. And a blockchain can also be kind of a Trojan horse for some of these opportunities, where we can get blockchain structure and get governments used to working with ledgers in other places, and then they will. I think we can argue the usefulness of having as much of the financial system as makes sense, also linked in some ways to ledgers through different forms of crypto assets. So I think this is encouraging news to see blockchain adoption on this national level, because I think that's going to also lead to further and further opening for crypto uses.
Yeah, certainly, as one door opens, perhaps it can be the gateway to larger opportunities. But I guess we'll hope and see how that one pans out. But now, moving over to Eastern Asia, where we have Korea, and you've teased this story a few times now, so I'm excited to see what we've got here. But the Korean opposition party publishing even more pro-crypto and innovation policies in the current government. Korea's always been seen as a fairly pro-crypto, or at least a crypto-active nation in some senses, and they're going even more so now. What can you tell us, Ethan?
Well, I think, to be fair, I think Korea is seen as very blockchain-friendly. They've established in Busan this blockchain kind of sandbox to allow for different kinds of projects to be built, again, kind of like on the infrastructure level like we just saw, but in many other ways. But I would not say that they're crypto-friendly completely in that sense. I think they're very much hesitant about a lot of these things, and there's still lots of spaces around the crypto space that have to be evolved. But that is exactly where the Liberty Korea Party, which is, I guess, the main opposition party, I don't know enough about South Korean politics to know exactly what chance they stand in the next election and what that looks like. But they just had a big kind of assembly where they published a report they've been working on, their 2020 economic transformation plan, and they have this idea of a digital finance Korea initiative. And a big part of that is to not just be blockchain friendly, but to be extremely pro crypto assets, especially when it relates to security tokens. So to open the doors to tokenized securities around real estate and intellectual property and commodities and other things. So that's incredibly interesting and is not the case right now in Korea. So I think that's incredibly good news. But one of the things I think to be seen as important is that Korea's Financial Services Commission, so the current administration, has announced plans to bring crypto exchanges under their regulation. So I think that they will get there as well. I think that it's this path of making sure that crypto isn't being used for the wrong things. And I think in certain markets like Korea, it got off to such a big start with ICOs, and there was so much noise and potentially so much bad stuff that happened, at least bad actors trying to do things, that they kind of pushed back and really put this in a box to figure it out and get it done right. So I think that they're also on their way to figuring this out, but it's very interesting to see at least that the other side of the political spectrum is pushing to have this be a bigger deal of the South Korean economy and their financial strategy.
Important stepping stone, potentially, as you say. We'll have to see how Korean elections and politics play out. I myself am not well versed enough to know either, but regardless, the fact that any major party is talking about it is always positive news for the crypto sphere. But now, staying in a similar region, Malaysia and apparently the Swiss fighting fake diplomas using the blockchain. I didn't even know this was such a huge problem until I read up on this, Ethan, but this seems to be a major potential use case for blockchain here.
Yeah, it's been floated around as one of the use cases for a while, but like you, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but it turns out that lots of people have CVs that do not exactly conform to reality, I guess. And so according to some of the stuff I read, it can take anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks to validate a degree. And there are commercial solutions out there that are not blockchain based. And to a certain degree that should be able to work. I guess that was a good pun. That should work just fine. But the reality is the immutability of being able to push something to a blockchain and allow it to be a public ledger and allow it to be pingable in some way to just kind of instantly verify without necessarily giving away personal information, how exactly things, people relate to their degrees. There's probably some very interesting stuff that will be worked on. And Malaysia, the Ministry of Education had been testing something called eScroll, which is an application that verifies pretty much instantly educational degrees, is rolling that out nationally. So that's already interesting to see that they've been testing it. They're rolling it out. The way that it works, there is a QR code that is printed on any educational certificate now being issued in Malaysia, and simply scanning that verifies all the information through a blockchain ledger. So that's pretty interesting. And if we look at the kind of related news in Malaysia, just again, it's fun to see these countries embracing more and more blockchain, because that's opening the door for the crypto side of things. They just launched a work visa program specifically tied to blockchain jobs. So up to 12 months renewable to be able to come in and either train or work in the blockchain space in Malaysia. Switzerland doing the same thing. Now this isn't on a national level. It's a university, but I think there was 2 other universities that I saw were doing very similar things. That same thing. They're using something called Block Factory, which is a Swiss company, to verify and validate the authenticity of diplomas. But there related news, just not as recently. Canada is doing that at the Alberta Institute of Technology, which will be launching blockchain-based degrees starting spring. So I guess they already did. And the University of Bahrain is doing with another partnership learning machine to provide blockchain diplomas as well. So it looks like that's something that hasn't found necessarily a single standard, but that there's a lot of movement in this space. I didn't get a chance to look, but if there's that many applications already, I'm sure that these startups have rolled out many other integrations of this. So that's kind of a cool thing. And if that creates just a little bit more understanding of people going, oh yeah, blockchain's kind of cool, it helped me fix this or helped me do that, that creates more opportunity to solve problems through the blockchain, and then that creates more opportunity to have confidence potentially in crypto assets, and that's the goal here. So good news.
It's certainly exciting news and a good potential to get those use cases out there, the ever-elusive use case that everyone's always looking for. This one seems to be in the bag, and we'll have to see if it does get that wider scale operation. But in the meantime, Ethan Pierce, I want to thank you so much for taking on this tour across the globe, both crypto
Always
and
a pleasure.
otherwise. Thanks so much for being on, Ethan. And in the meantime, stay with us at blocktv.com for all the latest in news and information. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.